This is draft season. John Schmeelk, Tony Pauline with you. It's all brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risks into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. Tony Pauline, of course, you can find all his work over at Sportskeeda. Folks, if you missed it, go back to our previous episode. We talk about the college football playoffs. We talk about the players at the Shrine Game. We're recording this a week before it airs. It's going to air on the last Monday in January. We were recording it the week prior, so just note some of the players we talk about might back out at some point, and they might not be participating. There might be players we don't mention that come in late and are participating, like those players in the national championship game. So just keep that in mind moving forward. The video will just be the Senior Bowl preview if you're watching this on the Giants YouTube channel. If you want, on the audio version of this podcast over at the draft season audio podcast feed, also the Giants podcast network feed, giants.com/podcast, Giants app. The audio version is also going to have something on the back end of this, which will probably be 20 minutes or so of Tony and I breaking down what we saw at Shrine Bowl practice over the weekend. That's obviously not recorded yet because that happens in the future, but we will add that on to this. We'll record that on Sunday afternoon, and Tony and I will talk about that, and that'll be on the audio version of this podcast if you guys want to go and check that out. Or if you're on the audio version, just stay tuned, and it'll be with you at the very end of this episode. But for today, we're going to preview the Senior Bowl. And Tony, I think last year, I believe it was a record 10 Senior Bowl participants went in the first round of the NFL draft. Given the nature of this class and how many people are showing up to the Senior Bowl in order to try to secure their spot in this draft, I think we might go over 10 this year, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be excited about. You look at some of the quarterbacks, you look at some of the pass catchers and tight ends, you look at the offensive linemen, you look at the defensive linemen. I mean, there will be a lot of talent on the field at the South Alabama field. Jim Nagy did a great job this year.
All right, so prepare yourself. At the end of this, Tony, I'm going to ask you how many, and you're going to tell me who, and which guys from the Senior Bowl will go in the first round. So make note as we go. I will test you at the end of the podcast with that question. All right, let's start the quarterbacks, and it's headlined by your guy, Jalen Milroe out of Alabama. Riley Leonard, Will Howard are supposed to be there. Just a really good group. You have Jackson Dart from Ole Miss. He's exciting. We talked about the Louisville quarterback as well. Tyler Show, who has a lot of talent, is just really an older prospect, but a really good player. So just Dylan Gabriel, who is obviously in the running for the Heisman. So a lot of really good players at this quarterback position. A lot of times, sometimes you get to that third or fourth quarterback on each team, and you kind of go, all right, it's not that important for me to watch this guy. People are going to be leaning forward and watching every one of these quarterback reps because a lot of these guys could be gone by round 3 or 4.
Starting with Jalen Milroe, who I think could be gone by the middle of the first round. Remember, the last Alabama quarterback that went to the Senior Bowl and knocked it out of the park was Mac Jones. And I would have never thought it, but leaving the Senior Bowl, everyone thought that Mac Jones was a first-round pick. He ended up in the middle of the first round, for better or worse. But that shows you the power of the Senior Bowl. And I think with Jalen Milroe, it's going to be very interesting. He's got to be precise with his passes. He's got to show downfield accuracy. In my opinion, he's as physically talented, gifted as any of the top quarterbacks in this draft. He's got a great arm. We've seen him take over games running the ball. We've seen him, in the early game against Georgia, basically destroy Georgia early on with his arm and then come back late in the game and win the game with his arm. But it's the consistency or the lack thereof that has really hurt Jalen Milroe. So I think with Milroe, you want to see consistent accuracy, especially down the field. That will be the difference for him being maybe a late first-round pick as opposed to a mid-first-round pick. He is a leader. He's got a lot of high character. We talk about the Senior Bowl. We talk about the Combine. One of the things that's most important about the Senior Bowl are the interviews. I mean, you go back to Phil Savage when he ran the Senior Bowl and he set up that whole interview process to make it Combine-like. That's going to be very important for Milroe as well, although I think he'll do a good job there. Riley Leonard, if he plays, because, his season ended so late with the national title game, if he's not banged up, again, you want to see some accuracy. You want to see him be able to throw the ball accurately, rolling out on the move. He's a leader. He's athletic. He's got the arm strength. So everything should align well for Riley Leonard in this sort of situation, as it should for Will Howard of Ohio State, because, this is perfect for Will Howard. Will Howard's the biggest problem with his game, as far as I'm concerned, is the fact that he really doesn't turn his head quick enough from the primary target. So when he's in those one-on-ones, when he's in those 5-on-5s, I mean, he's got the arm strength to make all the throws. He's got decent accuracy. The pass catchers are not twisting in the wind to catch his passes. So these are set up perfectly for Will Howard to really shoot up draft boards. And then Jackson Dart. I mean, here's a guy a lot of people didn't talk about too much coming in the season as far as an early round pick. I always had him as a day 2 pick. He could go earlier. I think with Jackson Dart, what we want to see is arm strength. We know he's accurate. We know he protects the football. Can he drive the passes downfield with speed? If he does that, I think there's a chance Jackson Dart could end up as a late first round pick.
Yeah, I think him and Dylan Gabriel were the two most, in terms of production, right? Productive quarterbacks in college. You mentioned what you want to see out of Dart. How about Gabriel? What is it the same deal? You want to see some of those tools and quarterback tools, arm strength? Is that what scouts want to see out of him too?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the question with Dylan Gabriel is he a Baker Mayfield type where he could be a number 1 quarterback, or is he always going to be a number 3 quarterback? I think that's the difference is. He's always been super productive, and he's got it going on between the years. He does a great job running the offense. He always has. He did it at Oklahoma, did it at Central Florida, did it at Oklahoma, did it this year at Oregon. Doesn't have a big time arm, so you want to see the arm strength, especially rolling out. You know, when he's rolling out to his right, or left, is he losing a lot of speed on passes? Is he losing accuracy on passes? Because a smaller quarterback like that, he's got to play from the pocket, but you're also going to roll him outside and have him throw on the move a lot.
All right, Tony, you've been doing this a lot longer than me, but this to me is easily the best running back class I've ever seen in an all-star game in my time going to these games. And I've been going, I don't know, 6, 7, I got to look, 6, 7 years now, something like that. But man, there are 6, 7, 8 running backs here that are all legitimate NFL players. I'll let you start wherever you want to start, my friend.
Well, I'll start with it's very unusual, and I've been going to Senior Bowl since 2000, so it gives you an idea how old I am. It's very unusual for a running back to make a big move up draft boards off of the Senior Bowl because, there's only so much hitting. You're looking at the pass catching skills and the blocking skills. But I agree with you. I mean, this is a terrific class. You look at the small school guys, you got to start off with Marcus Yarns of Delaware. I mean, if you're looking for a prototypical third down type back, it's Marcus Yarns because he is as good catching the ball out of the backfield as he is when the ball is handed off to him. He's a smaller guy. He's creative. He's only a situational player, but he's very good in all those situations. Was injured last year, didn't have the year a lot of people had expected or hoped for because of that injury. But he can do a little bit of everything, and he's built for today's NFL. Then you go to Damian Martinez. In my opinion, the most underrated back in this year's draft. Was a monster at Oregon State last year, transferred to Miami that had 3 good backs, he being one of them on the depth chart, didn't get the carries that he expected, which means he didn't get the production, which may not be a bad thing because, you don't want a running back coming into the draft when he's had 250, 300 carries, a lot of mileage on the body there. But when you watch Damian Martinez, he's smart. He's got great vision. He's patient. He's a bigger 230-pound back that also runs like a 215-pound back in the sense that he can run over you. He can run around you. He can make you miss. He's creative. And he's also a good pass catcher out of the backfield, even though they didn't throw the ball to him that much at Miami last year. So I love Damian Martinez. I love his overall game. I would want to watch him catch how he does catching the ball in the backfield, see him in those blocking drills. Also watch how many times he makes defenders miss. And then the last guy, well, a couple other guys, Donovan Edwards of Michigan. We were both very high on him last year. He showed some incredible talent, kind of really took a step back this year, I think. Runs a little bit tall. You want to see if he's running with good lean and behind his pads. Woody Marks, the Mississippi State transfer, who went to USC, I think is underrated. Quick, explosive, creative, also a sensational pass catcher out of the backfield. LeQuint Allen of Syracuse. He's a phenomenal pass catcher in the backfield. He's not very creative. He's really better downhill between the tackles. When he tries to turn the corner, he loses a lot of speed, momentum, and quickness. He's not going to make defenders miss. He's not going to improvise when plays break down, but he is a masher who catches the ball incredibly well. And then Trevor Etienne, who we spoke about a week ago when we previewed the underclassmen. I think coming into the season, both of us were very high on Etienne, very creative, a guy that you could do a lot of different things with. Really didn't have the season he was expected to have at Georgia because of injury, because of suspension. Surprised he entered the draft. He's got a lot riding on the line at Senior Bowl.
All right, I want to throw a couple of the running backs out there. Do you think that Edwards' teammate, Khalil Mullins, is actually a more highly ranked prospect than Edwards is right now?
Right now, absolutely. I mean, he had a much better year. He showed much more improvement in his game. He's a powerful guy, but also has got excellent short area quickness. I mean, Michigan, especially in that Ohio State game, went to him when they needed a big run, and he delivered. So I would say absolutely, because Edwards is not as highly rated as he was a year ago, whereas teammate is much higher rated and shown much more progress in his game.
All right, there's three other guys I want to touch on, which I know seems crazy. At least I want to mention them. You can touch on them if you want. Devin Neal, who was just extremely productive at Kansas, right? You watch him on tape, you don't see anything that jumps out and is spectacular, but just a really solid all-around player. Ollie Gordon, I know, was a guy that some people had in the top 3 running back mix before the year. I was never in that group, but he, I think, had a bit of a disappointing year. And then RJ Harvey, who, at Essential Florida, Tony, I watched him last week. That dude is explosive. He is fast. He is going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Beats defenders in the open field and can take it to the house, can run the daylight. He's also got some creativity in his ball carrying. Good to see him in this game. You mentioned Gordon. Gordon's a guy that, he's a tall running back who runs tall. He runs with a bit of an upright style, which absolutely. I think does not really project that well to the next level, because it could lead to a lot of crushing blows. I guess I like Trevor Etienne. Etienne is a little bit surprised that Gordon's in the draft. I don't know if he had any eligibility left, but again, he's going to need a big showing at the Senior Bowl.
All right, let's go to the pass catches here, Tony. And again, and we talked about the Shrine Game, right? I'm just as excited about this tight end class as I am the wide receiver class. I mean, Harold Fanning Jr., who has the numbers of a wide receiver and, doesn't play. I'll be honest with you. I want to start with Fanning individually before we jump to the guys. Because I went in watching, and I assumed that he was just going to be a receiver, and that's all he did. And look, I think he'll probably weigh in like 230. Like, he's not going to be a big guy, right? But he tries to block. Like, there's effort there. He puts his body in there. How well he's going to do against NFL-sized players, that's another conversation. But he's a guy that's willing to play physical. Like, he catches the ball. He tries to run through people. Despite the fact that he's maybe a little undersized and profiles as kind of like a move F type of tight end, he plays the physical brand of football, which I was pretty impressed by.
Go back and watch the Penn State game, because he played incredibly well in that Penn State game. He was basically the offensive threat for Bowling Green, and Penn State couldn't stop him. I think he had 6 receptions for close to 100 yards in that game. I think the thing with Fannin is how fast is he? Does he have the speed to get downfield? Is he a 4.75 guy, which is basically going to push him into the late part of day 2? Or is he a faster guy? Does he play fast? So he's got to show in those one-on-ones that he can beat linebackers consistently down the field, or even better, he can beat those safeties downfield, because speed is also a big question in his game.
Well, one tight end that speed is not a question in his game, Tony, is Elijah Arroyo of Miami. Yeah. I think he might be the fastest tight end in this class. And he had very little production up until this year. And boy, there are some plays where you go, all right, as a receiving weapon, this guy's got it.
A Rondé Gatson type, Gatson we spoke about last week in the Shrine Bowl preview, is he a tight end, or is he just an oversized receiver playing the tight end position? The one thing about Arroyo is he catches the ball incredibly well. They line him up all over the place at Miami. They line him up in the slot, they line him up out on the flanks, and he'll get down the field and he'll catch the ball. So again, you talked about Fanning giving effort in that as a blocker. In those one-on-one blocking drills, you got to watch Arroyo. I mean, is he able to hold his ground? Is he able to stay square? Or is he just getting annihilated in those one-on-one drills by the linebackers? It's going to be very big for him.
All right, who else at tight end jumped out of your Tone?
I like Thomas Fedone of Nebraska. Here's a guy who basically the coach told him, look, you should enter the draft. Matt Rule said, you might as well enter the draft because there's really no place for you here in the offense that we're going to run or transfer to another school. He decided to enter the draft, sort of an unknown, but he's athletic. He's got real good size. He's a decent blocker. He also moves very well. He's a real good intermediate and short range pass catching target. On the other hand, is Jackson Hawes from Georgia Tech, who's a tremendous blocker. I mean, he's almost like another offensive lineman out in the field, who is also a real good short range pass catching target. So I think with Fedone, you want to see, and Hawes, you want to see the downfield speed. Fedone's a natural pass catcher. With Hawes, you want to see if he catches the ball naturally or as well as he does on film.
All right, there's a couple of tight ends I want to bring up here, Tony, that you did not mention that I think are interesting players. All right. One is Mason Taylor out of LSU. A lot
Yeah.
of people are huge fans of his. I watched him and I was thinking, all right, third round player, something like that. But you talk to people down that I know that follow LSU very closely that are in the business, and they think that maybe he has a little bit more juice to his game than maybe what I saw on tape, and they think he might be like the third tight end off the board in this class. Just curious what you're hearing about Mason Taylor and what your thoughts on him were watching him on tape.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, third tight end off the draft. I would agree with the fact that he's a day two player. He could, I believe, potentially be a late second round choice. But he's a natural pass catcher. He's athletic. Obviously, has the bloodlines from who his dad is.
Jason
Uh,
Taylor.
and,
Yep.
and he's still developing at the position. And I think there's a bit up and down with that up and down inconsistency with that LSU offense this year, despite who they had at quarterback. But he's still developing at the position. He's the type of guy, you do this with all the players, but especially a guy like Mason Taylor. You're drafting him in 2025. You're expecting him to be a knockout player in 2027.
Yeah, and he is bigger size. He's 255, at least that's what he's listed as. So we'll see what he weighs in at. But he could be a two-way tight end too that can block and catch. One of the tight end, Tony, Gunnar Helm. I watched him last week out of Texas. Another really interesting player. Really good size, good height. He has the size and frame, I think, to become a two-way player and a good blocker. He made some really nice plays at Texas. Good route runner, good hands. I think he has some real potential too.
Does he have the speed to be a number one tight end? Is he a number one tight end? Does he have the athleticism and speed to be number one tight end, or is he just a real good number two? And it also depends on the type of scheme that you run. If you're more reliant on your wide receivers and you don't want your tight ends to get 30, 35 yards downfield, then he could be a number one. Like the guy the Jets have, Conklin. I like him, but I think he's a day three pick unless he kind of tests through the roof much better than I expect. But that's okay because he's going to have a place at the next level.
Yeah, I'm with you. Not super explosive, but I thought he runs routes well. He catches the ball well. I think he could be a real solid guy. I'm with you on that. All right. Wide receivers, Tony. You got a couple guys on the list that you're excited about.
Well, you got to start, and hopefully he plays with Alec A.O. Manor, the third-year sophomore out of Stanford. Some people have him as a first-round pick. I don't think so after watching him on film. He's got nice length. He's got natural hands. He's got long arms, and it looks like he's got big hands. So those measurements are going to be interesting. Makes a lot of really incredibly athletic receptions. Not really fast, not really quick. A guy who will continually win out for the contested pass. Now, that guy can go first round if you're looking for that type of receiver. But again, he's a little bit young. He needs to develop his game. Doesn't have a big route tree. Didn't run a lot of different routes at Stanford. They basically threw him the ball in the middle of the field, sometimes out on the flanks. Not a guy that's going to beat defenders down the field. It's going to be interesting to watch him. Watch that quickness. Is he able to separate from the defenders as he needs to? Ty Felton out of Maryland. Here's a guy who can separate. Here's a guy who's got big play potential. Here's a guy who I believe is very underrated. He's a good pass catcher. He's fast. He's got big playability. Not the biggest guy in the world, but someone who is developing and was a much better receiver in 2024 than he was in 2023. And then lastly, Pat Bryant. I mean, a guy who caught everything at Illinois. Wasn't considered draftable coming into the season. Now he's in the Senior Bowl. Was major production at Illinois last year. Was the go-to receiver. Opponents could not stop. Still think he's a day three pick. But, if you're looking to round out your receiver core, get that fourth or fifth receiver on the depth chart, he's a good bet late in the draft.
A couple other guys I want to mention, Tony. We've talked about Xavier Restrepo a bunch. Really classic, tough, route runner, slot, not super fast, but he's going to be a really good pro. Tez Johnson, who's like the opposite. He's like the super small, super fast speed guy on the outside. I think he was listed 160 pounds or something like that. So those two guys. And then I watched the two Iowa State wide receivers last week, and I think they're interesting. Jaden Higgins is that bigger guy, but he gets over the middle, good hands, doesn't drop anything, a lot of hand catches in there. And then as a slot guy where Jalen Noel played most of the time, he's got some juice, man. He's a vertical slot. He's not one of these shifty guys that, runs back and forth and changes direction, but he's got over-the-top speed. There's a lot of big plays on that tape for him.
Yeah, they work well together, complementary, sort of like the Ohio State running backs as we talked about in the past. I love Repestro from Miami. I mean, here's a guy who, you talk about the route running, you talk about the hands. He's also on the same page as his quarterback, as was with Cam Ward last year. So he basically knew what Cam Ward was doing, knew when he had to come back to the ball, knew when he had to go across the field. small, not a big guy, but is not going to back down to a challenge and always finds a way to separate. See how he does in those press coverage drills. If they play press coverage, is he able to separate? Yeah, he's going to catch everything that's thrown in his direction.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's jump over to the offensive line, Tony. And a lot of guys in this list that we're going to play at multiple positions and see where scouts like them.
A lot of guys that could go first round. I mean, you talk about Jonas Savanea of Arizona. You talk about multiple positions. Is he a guard? Is he a tackle? He's a terrific offensive lineman who could go first round. I don't have him there yet, but we'll see what happens. Emory Jones, who I mentioned during our underclassmen preview, a guy who coming into the 2024 season was rated right there with Will Campbell. But
he had a rough year, Tony. I watched him last week. He had a rough year over there at right tackle for them.
Absolutely. I mean, has shown the ability, good pass protection skills, a lot of strength. He's got to get his game back on track. He's going to have to play really well at the Senior Bowl. He'll continue to tumble down draft boards. Anthony Belton, the athletic left tackle from North Carolina State. You want to talk about inconsistency? I mean, Belton was a guy who entering the 2023 season, scouts thought was a top 60 pick. The consistency is not there. He's all over the place. I mean, decent fundamentals, but lacks balance. He needs a big week. Josh Connerly, who I've spoken about at length, I really love his game. Is he a left tackle? Is he a guard? He's a real good blocker who's going to be real good in his own system. We'll see how he does against those bigger defensive ends. Not the speed guys. And speed guys I'm not worried about with Connerly. It's the bigger, stronger guys. Marcus Embo of Purdue, who is an incredibly athletic right tackle. Think Lane Johnson in that sort of realm. So the guy who is so athletic and he's got such good footwork at right tackle, you think you can put him on the left side. He's got to improve his strength at the point of attack. And then Wyatt Millum, who I'm not sold on Wyatt Millum yet. A lot of people think he's a first-round pick. We'll wait and see what happens. A big week for him at left tackle when he goes up against those speed rushers who we'll talk about. Can he shut them down?
One guy you didn't mention on your list here, Tony, is Armand Membo.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah.
No, that's okay. I watched him last week, and there are guys where you wonder, I'm not sure if he could play tackle. That guy is walk-in right tackle for me that you feel good about playing. Very solid. No traits that like super jump off the page to me, but you just watch him. He blocks everybody. He just doesn't get beat a lot.
The thing with Membo is, does he have the height to play tackle? Because he's estimated to come in about 6'3". Now we'll have to wait and see what he officially is, at the Senior Bowl. But I agree with you. I mean, he is powerful. He's explosive. He's strong. He's also not bad on his feet. He'll get out to the second level, and he shows some ability blocking in motion. A well-rounded game, regardless of whether it's tackle or guard. He's going to be a good starting NFL offensive lineman.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, let's jump over to the defensive side of the ball here. But first, a reminder that draft season is brought to you by Moody's. Moody's is a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at Moody's.com. All right, let's again go to the defensive side of the ball here, Tony. And that offensive line is going to have their hands full. Because I said about the running back class, this is as good of a defensive line class I think we've had here in a while. I don't know if you want to separate them tackles and edge guys. Do this however you want, because you have, I think, 11 on your list. I have another 5 on mine. It is a great, 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 great group. You might have 4 or 5 first-round picks just from this group of players.
I'm going to go with the edge guys first. Donovan Izuruka of Boston College, who we talked about, an incredibly high-intensity type of defensive lineman, pass rusher, gives effort against the run, makes plays not just up the field, but laterally. I mean,
and he's productive, Tony. Like, people want to see pressures and sacks. He's gotten them. Like, there's proof of concept there. He's a productive player.
I think what it was, 16 sacks and 21 TFLs this year off the top of my head for him. The thing with him is, can he make plays in reverse? How does he do? Do they use him in coverage drills, and how does he do? If he does well, his draft stock is going to take off. Mike Green, who I spoke about on this podcast back in October, another very athletic, probably more athletic than Izuruka from Boston College, in the sense that he's quicker to the sidelines, he's better in space, very explosive, but a tall, thinner guy. How does he hold up in the one-on-ones? I mean, is he able to, get penetration in those one-on-ones, or is he getting obliterated at the point of attack? Ja Joyner, who I thought coming into the season had a chance to be a late first-round pick, had an injury, didn't meet expectations because of the injury. But again, like Green, like Azuruka of Boston College, undersized but very athletic pass rusher who's fast up the field, can make plays out to the sidelines in pursuit, and creates a lot of havoc. And then I know somebody that you really like, and we spoke about a lot, Nick Scourton, who went from Purdue to Texas A&M, had a good season. I have him in the middle of my, I think like right in the early 20s in my first round mock. He's a guy he's not a small edge rusher. He's got some size to him. He's got some stoutness to him, so he can play the run, but he's very athletic and he's very quick up the field.
All right, Tony, before you jump to the defensive tackles, I want to throw a couple other edge guys that are going to be there. Princely, the kid out of Ole Miss, he's going to be there. Really good edge player. And then Shamar Stewart for me, who plays up and down the line at Texas A&M. So I don't know if you want to classify him as an edge necessarily. They haven't listed at 290 pounds, so I don't know if that's where he actually is going to weigh in at. But, boy, he is a athletic freak show at that size. The production hasn't been there, I know. But some team is going to fall in love with his potential, I think, as a guy that just has every tool you want.
He's got excellent size. He's got growth potential, too, which means that, he's a guy who 2 or 3 years down the line in an NFL weight training program, not that they have a bad one at Texas A&M, he's going to be bigger. He's going to be stronger. He's got some scheme versatility as well. He's the type of guy that as he fills out, you could probably use him as effectively in a 3-man line as you can in a 4-man line. Going to the defensive tackles, start off with Ty Robinson of Nebraska. I've spoke about him multiple times.
I watched him last week, and you told me how good he is. That guy's a fun watch, man. He is just a bowling ball. He's upfield all the time. His effort's off the charts. That guy is one of the safest picks in this draft. He is going to be a good player.
And all he does is make plays. They can't stop him. Like I said, I was at the Ohio State game when McLaughlin was the center, and he ate McLaughlin up. Destroyed him. And they lined him up at nose tackle. They lined him up on the outside. They lined him up defensive tackle. He's got excellent length. He's got growth potential. He's athletic. He is a terrific player. So I'm going to be looking for that. I'm looking for him. And remember, we talk about the quarterbacks. The history of this Senior Bowl is defensive linemen who go to the Senior Bowl and have great days of practices can also watch their draft stock skyrocket. I mentioned how, in these games, you don't really see running backs move up draft boards. That's not the case with defensive linemen. You play well the defensive line, you're making plays, your draft stock is going to take off. One guy who I don't think has played all that well this year, not as much as I expected, is Yahya Black out of Iowa, an athletic, explosive guy. He's got a lot of upside. Deion Walker, Kentucky. Let's hope that we see him play. He's slated to play. He's on the list right now.
I want to see him weigh in too, Tony. I want to see what that dude weighs in at.
Not only weigh in, but how is he playing? Is he gassed after a couple of reps? Even if he's 340 pounds and he's playing consistently at a high intense level, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I would agree with
340, I'm fine. I don't want him to pull a sweat from last year where he's rolling into like 375 because
375 plus 15 pounds as far as sweat was concerned. That's probably why they never announced it. But yeah, Walker, I think has the potential if he shows well at practice, if he's not getting gassed, and he does well with the interviews, his draft stock can take off.
Tony, real quick on Walker, I just want to add to him a little bit because coming in, you looked at his 2023 tape. He was dominant consistently.
Yep.
He still had flashes this year, but there were just too many plays where it's like, how are you not dominating this guard right now? And you're just kind of sitting there like, what's going on? So I'm not sure what happened with him this year because I thought he was significantly better in 2023. He's going to be a guy that I think wildly fluctuates on boards based on the interview process, to your point, and how many people – because, look, not many people are born that size that can move that way.
Right.
And it just didn't show up enough on tape this year, which I thought was weird.
And he's not just a big guy. You talk about how he moves well. He is a playmaker. He's a guy who's shown the ability to rush the passer. Jamari Caldwell of Oregon, this is a guy that people don't talk about, but when they talk about his teammate Harmon, but when you watch the Oregon film, this guy is incredibly explosive. He's commanding double team blocks. He's getting penetration. He's making plays. And Aeneas Peebles of Virginia Tech, another slightly smaller but very explosive interior defensive lineman, great first step, plays with outstanding leverage, outstanding pad level, a terrific one-gap penetrator. See how he does against those bigger offensive linemen in the one-on-ones.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's going to be fun. A couple other tackles I want to mention, Tony. Walter Nolan is going to be
Yeah.
at this game. He could be a late first, early second round pick. TJ Sanders, another player that I know a lot of people are big fans of. I liked him when I watched him. And then the other Shamar out of Texas A&M, Shamar Stewart. Shamar Turner, pardon me. We talked about Stewart. Shamar Turner, who I think is going to be a pretty good interior defensive lineman too.
And then you move to the linebacker spot. I mean, this guy kind of fits in as both an edge rusher or a linebacker. David Walker out of Central Arkansas, Division II school. Guy had a lot of production as a pass rusher in college. Now he's going to have to basically do it standing over tackle. I'm sure they'll have him come out of a 3-point system, but he's got to show some versatility. He's got to show that he's got the ability to do more than just make plays up the field at the size he is, which is about 230, 235 pounds. Because if he can't, his draft stock is going to drop because he's going to be basically branded as a small school edge rusher that was able to basically overwhelm the competition that he played against. So it's a big week for him. I like Nick Martin of Oklahoma State a lot. Incredibly explosive. 3-down linebacker, good blitzer, good in pursuit, outstanding in coverage. Same thing with Cameron Schweichinger of UCLA, an underclassman who entered the draft. More of your traditional 3-4 weak side linebacker. Not a great blitzer, but if it's 3rd and 6, you need somebody to cover the tight end and somebody to cover running back. He does an outstanding job at it.
All right, let's jump over to the defensive backs, Tony.
Maxwell Hairston of Kentucky. Want to see how tall he is. He's got terrific ball skills. See how tall he is. See how he matches up against the taller receivers. Does he get his head back around to track the ball in the air, or is he doing a lot of face guarding? Trey Amos of Mississippi. A lot of people are giving him first round love. I'm not there yet with Trey Amos. Remember him at Arkansas, Louisiana. When he was at Louisiana, he was a good player. Transferred to Alabama. Played in spurts in 2023. I believe was injured. A lot of people like him. Big week for him. Dante Trader, a couple of good safeties. Dante Trader, lacrosse star at Maryland, very explosive. Had an injury this year, so didn't meet expectations. We'll see if he's there, but a guy who can play the run, explosive against the run, can also play the pass. Hunter Wohler of Wisconsin, outstanding run defender at Wisconsin. I mean, a real tough, sacrifice your body to make the tackle type of guy. How does he do in those one-on-one coverage drills? And Malik Verdon. Everyone talks about Imawari from South Carolina, the big safety, the linebacker size safety. Keep an eye on Verdon at Senior Bowl practices. He's just as big. He's just as explosive. Probably doesn't have the same ball skills. So with Verdon, how does he do in those one-on-ones? Is he able to flip his hips, stay with receivers, and show some cover skills? Or is he constantly trailing down the field? If it's the former, excuse me, he's going to go day 2 as a safety. If it's the latter, he's probably going to watch his draft stock take a hit, and people may start to look at him as a one-gap linebacker.
All right, Tony, I warned you of your homework assignment. So who do you think from this Senior Bowl roster is going to be a first-round pick in the 2024 or 2025?
Okay, well, yeah, give me a minute here, only because I was just looking at the list that I have. So I'll go through the positions with you, accepted Senior Bowl invites.
Yeah, absolutely. So who do you think will be top 10 picks? I'm sorry. Who do you think will be first-round picks in this year's draft that are at the Senior Bowl?
Okay, I'm looking at I don't see anybody from the defensive back position. People say Trey Amos. I'm going to lean off of that right now. So I don't see any defensive backs right now on this list that I would consider a first-round player. Move to the defensive line. Landon Jackson could be a very late first-round pick. It will say Landon Jackson. Okay. Deion Walker could be a bottom third of the first round. I'm not sold on Mike Green being a first rounder. I think he's more of a day 2 type of guy. Walter Nolan, I think, is going to be a first rounder. Jordan Birch, I mean, we haven't talked about him, but Jordan Birch is one of the more interesting players. When he's on his game, when he's on the field, when he's not injured, he shows all the traits of being a first-round pick. I don't think that's going to happen because of the injuries. A lot of people have Kyle Kennard as a first-rounder. I do not. Nick Scourton, I think, is going to be a first-rounder. I think between Shamar Stewart and Shamar Turner, one of those two guys will be first-rounders. Linebackers, I don't think we'll see any linebackers in the first round. Here's the interesting thing about the Senior Bowl offensive line group, especially the offensive tackle group. Except for Will Campbell, who is not playing in the game, and Josh Simmons, who can't play in the game, all your top offensive tackles are going to be in this game. Savanea could end up as a first-round pick. Moving down the line here.
How about your man Connerly?
Well, yeah, Ursary could be a first-round pick. I think Connerly will be a first-round pick. I think Embo will be a first-round pick. I think Wyatt Millum could be a first-round pick. And rounding it out, Jalen Milroe, I think, is the only first-round quarterback that'll be at the Senior Bowl. It's going to be first-round selection. None of the running backs, none of the tight ends, none of the receivers. So I hope you were counting.
I did. I counted. So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on defense. I got 4 offensive linemen and then 2 maybes on the offensive line. Do you want me to count those maybes and make it 11?
Well, no, because so that's 9, and then I said Jalen Milroe is going to be a first-round pick.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So 3 offensive linemen. I'm sorry. So the offensive linemen I have down for you in terms of making it are Savanea, Connerly, and Embo. Is there anyone else you'd like to add from that group into the first round? You said you weren't quite buying Millum.
Not yet, no. So yeah, I'll stick to my guns. I'll be stubborn as I usually am.
Absolutely. You're a tough grader, Tony. That's why we love you, man. So we got 9 guys right now as first-round picks to you. But we'll see how guys do. And here's what we're going to do, Tony. When we review the Senior Bowl next Monday, we'll see if you've increased your number a little bit. Good stuff,
Absolutely.
my friend. Tony, this is always a pleasure. Remember, folks, stay with us if you're on the audio version of this. Or if you're watching this on video, go to the audio version. We're going to review the first 2 days of Shrine practice. Make sure you tune into that. If you're watching this on video, go to the audio version. You'll have the Shrine review at the end of this episode. Anything else, Tony, that you have going up during Senior Bowl over at Sportskeeda that you want fans to keep an eye on?
No, just finishing up the team first round mocks. Any news that may break, and it's all geared towards. It's actually Frisco. It's not Dallas. Towards the Frisco first Shrine Bowl practice next Saturday.
And by the way, it'll be in North Texas. It will not be at the Ford Center with the Cowboys. So something else to keep an eye on. And we'll see if the coaching carousel has mostly stopped by the time we're down there over the weekend, or if it's still spinning. We'll have to see how that winds up. Because guys are getting hired fast and furious as of this recording. I don't think Aaron Glenn is interviewing with the Jets. The reports are that they're not going to let him leave the building. We'll see if that's true. And we'll see how that goes, Tony. So appreciate the time as always, my friend, and I will see you in person in about 5 days.
Look forward to it.
For Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda, I'm John Schmeelk. We will see you next time on Draft Season, brought to you by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Until then, everybody, safe travels. We'll talk to you from Mobile and Frisco.